Have you ever asked yourself this question? Why do I keep choosing the wrong partner? You meet someone new, things seem promising, you feel hopeful, and yet somehow the relationship slowly turns into the same painful story you've lived before. Perhaps they become distant, perhaps they're emotionally unavailable, perhaps you find yourself giving far more than you receive, and eventually you reach the same conclusion again. How did I end up here? Many people come to therapy with exactly this question. They look back at their relationships and notice a pattern. Different faces, different personalities, but the same emotional outcome. They feel rejected, unseen, or unimportant. And the confusion is this: if I can see the pattern, why do I keep repeating it? It's tempting to believe the problem is simply bad luck, or that you just haven't met the right person yet. But very often the real answer lies somewhere much deeper than the dating world. It lies in the psychological patterns we develop much earlier in life. In my work as a therapist, I often describe this using a simple model of the psyche that involves two powerful internal voices, the inner child and the inner critic. Together they create what I call the filial psyche. The inner child is the emotional part of us. It carries our early emotional experiences of love, connection, safety, and belonging. It remembers what it felt like to be seen or not seen, to be valued or to feel unimportant. These emotional memories are not stored as clear thoughts or stories. They are stored as feelings and sensations. And alongside the inner child, there is another part of the psyche that develops as we grow up, the inner critic. This is the thinking voice inside our mind that interprets our experiences and forms beliefs about who we are. If someone grows up feeling ignored, feeling rejected, or emotionally alone, the inner critic may form beliefs such as, I'm not important, I'm not good enough, or love is something I have to earn. Now here's where things become interesting. These two parts of the psyche become closely linked. The inner child carries the emotional memory, and the inner critic builds beliefs around those experiences. Together, they create a familiar emotional world, and human beings are strongly drawn toward what feels familiar, even when that familiarity is uncomfortable or painful. This means that when we meet potential partners, we are not simply evaluating them logically. Our unconscious mind is also asking a very different question. Does this person feel familiar to me? Sometimes the person who feels exciting, intriguing, or strangely compelling is actually activating emotional patterns we learn much earlier in life. For example, someone who grew up feeling they had to work hard for attention may feel strangely attracted to a partner who's distant or emotionally unavailable. Not because that person is healthy for them, but because the emotional dynamic feels recognizable. In other words, the nervous system recognizes the pattern, and when the pattern is familiar, the psyche often mistakes that familiarity for chemistry. So the person might think, well, this feels intense, this feels meaningful, this must be the right person, when in reality, what is happening is that an old emotional story is being reactivated. The inner child senses the possibility of finally getting the love, recognition, or validation it missed earlier in life. At the same time, the inner critic may quietly reinforce old beliefs. Try harder, give more, be patient. Eventually they will love you. But of course, the problem with repeating the same pattern is that it often produces the same ending. And so the cycle continues. Another relationship begins with hope and possibility and slowly turns into the same emotional experience of disappointment, rejection, or even loneliness. At this point, people often become frustrated with themselves. They ask, what is wrong with me? Why do I keep doing this? But the reality is that nothing is wrong with you. What you are experiencing is the powerful influence of unconscious patterns formed much earlier in life. Patterns designed by the psyche to make sense of the world and to protect us emotionally. The difficulty is that what protected us emotionally as children can limit us as adults. The good news is that once these patterns become conscious, they can begin to change. Therapy is often about bringing these unconscious dynamics into awareness, understanding the emotional needs of your inner child, recognizing the beliefs of the inner critic, and gradually developing another internal voice that many people were never taught to develop, the inner nurturing parent. This nurturing part of the psyche learns to care for the emotional needs of your inner child, while also gently challenging the harsh or limiting beliefs of the inner critic. And when this internal balance begins to change, something remarkable happens. People start to recognize relationship patterns earlier. They become less drawn to unhealthy dynamics, and they begin choosing partners who feel different, perhaps calmer, perhaps safer, perhaps less dramatic. At first, those healthier relationships may even feel unfamiliar, but unfamiliar does not mean wrong. Sometimes it simply means you are moving beyond an old pattern. So if you ever found yourself asking the question, why do I keep choosing the wrong partner? It might be worth asking a deeper question. What emotional pattern inside me keeps choosing the familiar? Because once you begin to understand the pattern, you are no longer trapped inside it. And that is often the moment when real change begins. So I'm curious, when you look back at your relationships, do you notice a repeating pattern? Something that seems to show up again and again? If so, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I read them all, and they often inspire the topics for future videos. And if you'd like help to explore more about how your early experiences shape your adult identity and relationships, you'll find more videos on this channel exploring the inner child, the inner critic, and how these patterns shape the life we live. Because sometimes understanding ourselves is the first step towards finally changing your story. And if you'd like help changing your story, visit my website, book a free discovery call. Let's see what's possible.